Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Gaurav Sharma, and with me is Vaibhav Jyotsna Srivastav, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. India highlights major areas of focus for the UN Security Council for August under its presidency. India and China agree to continue efforts in ensuring stability along the LAC in the western sector. Myanmar military Senior General Min Aung Hlaing declares himself the Prime Minister, expresses readiness to work with ASEAN leaders. UK summons Iranian ambassador over MV Mercer street attack. United States announces a priority to P2 designation program for Afghan refugee admissions. Beijing on high alert as China tries to contain flare-up in COVID-19 cases. And at the Tokyo Olympics, Indian women's hockey team scripts history by reaching Olympic semi-finals for the first time. Men's hockey team to take on Belgium in semi-finals on Tuesday. As the nationwide free COVID-19 vaccination campaign at government facilities for those above 18 years is underway, we advise our young listeners to get vaccinated and help others get vaccinated. We also advise our listeners not to lower their guard as COVID-19 remains a threat to our health. Please stay at home unless it is essential to go out and continue to follow these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki doori for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact the national helpline numbers 011-239-78046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. India assumed the presidency of the UN Security Council on Sunday. India began its 8th tenure at the Security Council when it joined the Council as a non-permanent member in January 2021. India's permanent representative to the UN ambassador, Tirumurti, spoke to the media on the 3 major areas in August under India's presidency.
Allow me to mention that it is both an honor and privilege for India to preside over the Security Council in August. The month of August is of particular significance to us, given the fact that India will be celebrating our 75th Independence Day on the 15th of August later this month. This, as you know, is our 8th tenure in the Security Council. India has chaired the Security Council last in November 2012. You would have seen the program of work. Let me start with the signature events that we plan to have during our presidency. There are 3 major areas which we will focus on in August: maritime security, peacekeeping, and counter-terrorism.
India and China have agreed to continue their effective efforts in ensuring stability along the line of actual control, LAC, in the western sector. In a joint press release after the 12th round of India-China Corps Commander level meeting held at the Chushul-Moldo border, both the countries also agreed to jointly maintain peace and tranquility. This round of meeting was held following the meeting of the foreign ministers of India and People's Republic of China on the 14th of July in Dushanbe and the 22nd meeting of the Working Mechanism for Consultation and Coordination on India-China Border Affairs WMCC held on the 25th of June. The 2 sides had a candid and in-depth exchange of views on resolution of remaining areas related to disengagement along the line of actual control in the western sector of India-China border areas. The 2 sides noted that this round of meeting was constructive, which further enhanced mutual understanding. They agreed to resolve these remaining issues in an expeditious manner in accordance with the existing agreements and protocols and maintain the momentum of dialogue and negotiations.
The State Administration Council of Myanmar has been reformed as the caretaker government of Myanmar, headed by the Chief of the Myanmar Military Senior General Min Aung Hlaing as the Prime Minister. In a televised speech on Sunday, General Hlaing also pledged to hold elections by 2023. He said that his administration was ready to work with a future regional envoy appointed by the ASEAN on Myanmar. In today's Hotspot section, we are joined by Rajesh Jha, Prasar Bharati Special Correspondent in Dhaka, who has been tracking the political developments in Myanmar to know more. On Sunday, the chief of the Myanmar military, Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, pledged to hold multi-party elections by August 2023. Mr. Jha, could you walk us through the developments in Myanmar leading up to the announcement?
This announcement by the Myanmar military chief General Min Aung Hlaing had come almost after 6 months when he seized power from the civilian government of Aung San Suu Kyi on February 1. If you remember, Aung San Suu Kyi had won the elections that were held in November 2020, and on the 2nd of February she was going to take part in the newly elected parliament in which her party, the National League for Democracy, had won a vast majority. Now, the military decided to take power and remove Aung San Suu Kyi from the position, and she was arrested along with the then president of Myanmar. If you look at the history of Myanmar, democracy in Myanmar has a checkered history, right from the time it became independent in 1948. After a period of military rule since 1962, the democracy movement started in Myanmar in 1988. And finally, in 2015, Aung San Suu Kyi became the state councillor. But her powers were vastly reduced because, according to the new constitution which was adopted by the military-backed government in Myanmar, the military had a big say in everything. In fact, 25% of the seats were reserved for the military in the parliament, and it was not possible to amend constitution. So since then, the balance between military and the civilian has been a bone of contention in Myanmar. This year, on February 1st, when the military seized power in Myanmar, initially it had promised that it will hold elections very soon. Later on, after some time, it said within 2 years, but now after 6 months, it says again that it will take 2 years. So effectively, it is now 2.5 years that they have promised the elections to be held. So only time will tell if the elections would actually be held in August 2023 or not, because a lot of things depend upon how the military perceives to be the situation on the ground and how other factors in the country shape up. Because the military chief has said that stability, economic stability, political stability is an important factor in lifting emergency and deciding about the elections. So it is only after some time we will come to know about the real situation in Myanmar and what happens to its democratic process.
The civilian government and its leader, State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi, faces trials, and the country has seen widespread protests recently. Rajeshji, can you give us a sense of the prevailing sentiment among the people in Myanmar since the coup of February the 1st?
Immediately after the government took power in Myanmar on February 1st, there has been a spontaneous uprising of people for democracy. All over the country there have been protests, big and large, and it has been met with strong force by the military. So much so that from the time this protest started, immediately after the February 1st takeover by the military, around 940 people have been killed and thousands of people have been arrested by the military government. And the protests have been largely taking place spontaneously. There has been no organized central leadership. Although there is a shadow government, there is an alternative government which has been formed a couple of months back in Myanmar. But the movement has been going on across the country almost spontaneously. People have been coming out, they have been using various creative means of protest. They have been coming out on the streets with candles, they have been using songs, they have been using various new methods of protest, and most of the times it has been peaceful from the side of the protesters. But the government has met the protests with a heavy hand, and the firings and killings have been quite rampant. In recent times, for the last month or so, the scale of protests has sort of declined, but politically from one place to another, we still hear reports of protests taking place. And in the meanwhile, government has also tried to release a number of prisoners, but those are not the political prisoners, but some of the old activists and others who were held up in the jails, they have been released. But the demand by multilateral agencies like UN and other countries like EU and many other agencies has met with stony silence or no reaction from the military government. But the protest in the country is continuing and unrest is widespread, although there is no centralized leadership, and by and large it is spontaneous in the country.
As we speak, the ASEAN leaders are meeting to finalize a special envoy to Myanmar to initiate dialogue between the military government and its opponents. Mr. Jha, can you tell us what the ASEAN and other regional actors are doing to restore peace in the country?
So far as Myanmar is concerned, there are several regional factors which come into play if you look at the process of democracy and the current political situation in Myanmar. China is of course an important ally of the current government with deep military ties and deep economic interest in Myanmar. And so far, China has been keeping position that it doesn't want to interfere in it calls the situation in Myanmar as the internal affair of the country. And at one point of time, it said it is just a kind of cabinet reshuffle. But it has been treading very cautiously because many of its economic interests are also involved in Myanmar. Some time back, there was an attack on a factory owned by the Chinese, and many of the Myanmarese protesters are coming out and blaming China for supporting the Myanmar military government. And China is aware of this risk. However, by and large, it is solidly behind the military government. Russia has also been quite in support of the military government. Now, the most important regional issue that has linked with the Myanmar government is the ASEAN. Now, ASEAN had a meeting in April this year in which it was decided that it would call for immediate cessation of violence and a visit to Myanmar by a regional special envoy. It also called for cessation of violence, but at that point of time, Myanmar did not respond positively. It just kept quiet and didn't respond with any clarity about the proposal of the ASEAN countries to send an envoy to Myanmar. So yesterday's announcement by the military government in Myanmar that it would welcome any envoy from the regional setup, that is ASEAN, is kind of a welcome change and shows some degree of softening of stance of the military government in Myanmar. It is hoped that the kind of influence that the ASEAN countries, of which Myanmar is also a member, enjoy over Myanmar, they would be able to initiate a process of dialogue between the military government and other democratic forces in Myanmar, so that the process of democratization and beginning of another phase of reconciliation and ultimately re-establishment of the democratic government in Myanmar is paved. But as of now, there is no response from ASEAN on this issue. Started its meeting today. The ASEAN foreign ministers meeting would decide what action to take, who would be the envoy to Myanmar. We will have to wait for the outcome of the ASEAN meeting, which is underway virtually from today.
And Mr. Jha, how exactly have the protests and the military crackdown affected COVID efforts in the country?
Well, the political turmoil in Myanmar has had a devastating effect on the COVID management in the country. It is estimated that only 40% of the medical services of Myanmar are functional as of now. A large number of people, including many of the doctors, have gone on strike. They are now part of the civil disobedience movement that has been sweeping through Myanmar ever since the military took power on February 1st. This has resulted in a kind of situation where in the recent meeting of the UN Security Council, it was pointed out by the representative of the Great Britain that almost 50% of the country might get infected by COVID-19 within the next 2 weeks. That's a very grave situation to take place. Now, the military has been looking for international assistance for COVID management. It has been getting some vaccines from China. India had also gifted good amount of vaccines right in the beginning. But unfortunately, till now, only about 3% of the population of Myanmar has been vaccinated, which is a very, very small number considering the fact that since the month of July, there has been a real surge in the number of cases in Myanmar. Now, with the fighting going on, the country being in chaos, this humanitarian crisis is also getting compounded by the political crisis in the country.
And just one last question, Mr. Jha. How has the political instability affected the relocation of Rohingyas?
The question of the relocation of Rohingyas from Bangladesh back to Myanmar has been there hanging in the balance for quite some time, ever since in August 2017 that around 8 lakh people, now it is estimated to be more than 1 million Rohingyas who crossed over to Bangladesh from the Rakhine province of Myanmar after a military crackdown there. Now, there have been many rounds of talks between Myanmar and Bangladesh about the repatriation and relocation of these Rohingya refugees back into Myanmar. And a few attempts also to convince the Rohingya refugees here living in the camps in Bangladesh to go back to Myanmar. But the people who are here want certain guarantees from the military government in Myanmar that they would be given the freedom of movement, they would be treated with dignity and so on and so forth. And the response has been extremely weak. Very few people have been willingly going back to Myanmar. And before the military takeover on February 1st, a couple of meetings were scheduled to take place between the governments of Myanmar and Bangladesh to discuss the modalities and the possibilities of the Rohingya repatriation back into Myanmar. But that has also gone into the back burner.
Thank you so much for your inputs, Mr. Jha. That was Prasar Bharati special correspondent Rajesh Jha joining us from Dhaka on the political developments in Myanmar.
The UK summoned the Iranian ambassador to the country on Monday. In a statement, the UK government said that it was in response to the unlawful attack on a merchant vessel off the coast of Oman on the 29th of July, in which a British national and a Romanian national were killed. Spokesperson of the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office said that the Iranian ambassador to the UK, Mohsen Baharvand, was summoned by the Minister for the Middle East, James Cleverly, in response to the unlawful attack committed on MV Mercer Street. The statement added that Minister Cleverly reiterated that Iran must immediately cease actions that risk international peace and security and reinforce that vessels must be allowed to navigate freely in accordance with international law. Earlier, the US also condemned the attack on Mercer Street. In a statement, the US Secretary of State said that upon review of the available information, it was confident that Iran conducted this attack. The United States has announced a priority or P2 designation program to provide certain Afghan nationals the opportunity to permanently resettle in the United States. In a statement, the U.S. State Department said that the P2 designation grants U.S. Refugee Admissions Program USRAP access for certain Afghan nationals and their eligible family members. The designation expands the opportunity to permanently resettle in the United States to many thousands of Afghans and their immediate family members who may be at risk due to their U.S. affiliation but who are not eligible for a Special Immigrant Visa SIV because they did not have qualifying employment or because they have not met the time and service requirement to become eligible. The statement said that access to the USRAP is a critical mechanism to provide protection for these individuals. The U.S. is undertaking what it calls Operation Allies Refuge to evacuate the Afghan nationals and their families who helped the United States and its allies during their operations in the 2-decade-long war in Afghanistan. The Special Immigrant Visas SIV scheme is for such Afghans who could have potential targets for Taliban retribution and includes Afghan interpreters and their families. The first flight of Operation Allies Refuge carrying Afghans who are eligible for Special Immigrant Visas SIV and their families arrived in the United States last Friday. India's cumulative COVID vaccination coverage has surpassed 47 crore 78 lakh on Monday. The Union Health Ministry said that more than 37 crore vaccine doses were administered as first dose and 10 crore 57 lakh doses given as second doses so far. The new phase of universalization of COVID-19 vaccination commenced from the 21st of June this year.
Now let's take a look at the coronavirus updates from around the world. China's capital, Beijing, is on a high alert to stop a flare-up in COVID-19 cases in the city as more Chinese cities have reported cases linked to the outbreak in Nanjing. Despite the high coronavirus vaccination rate in Beijing and 4 local cases, all flights, trains and buses from China's current coronavirus high-risk areas to the Chinese capital have been cancelled. 4 locally transmitted symptomatic cases have been reported in Beijing so far, all of them with links to the Zhangjiajie outbreak in the central province of Hunan, which also closed to visitors after becoming another COVID-19 hotspot because of infected arrivals from Nanjing. More than 350 people in 27 mainland cities have been infected with the recent outbreak, including confirmation on Monday of 7 infections in the central city of Wuhan, where the coronavirus was first detected. Prasar Bharati's special correspondent in Beijing reports that Beijing Communist Party Secretary Kai Chi said that the city must be guarded at all costs with the fastest, strictest measures and most decisive actions. In a meeting on Sunday, anyone from a city with confirmed COVID-19 case has been banned from entering Beijing, and flights, trains and long-haul buses from those places have been halted. A search of booking sites on Monday showed tickets for trains from outbreak areas such as Nanjing and Zhangjiajie were unavailable. Fully vaccinated tourists from the EU and the US do not have to quarantine upon entering the United Kingdom. Previously, the UK required vaccinated people to be isolated for 10 days upon arrival. Australia's Queensland extended a lockdown in its southern region until next Sunday afternoon. The news comes after the state reported 13 new locally acquired cases, which brings the total number of cases to 31. The city of Brisbane and nearby Gold Coast are among the areas affected. The UK has said that more than 85 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines have been administered across the United Kingdom. In a statement, the UK government urged everyone eligible to get vaccinated as soon as possible to protect themselves and their loved ones.
Authorities in the central Chinese province of Henan have revised the death toll from last month's floods to 302 as of Monday, triple the figure of 99 that was reported last week. Vast majority of the victims were reported in the provincial capital Zhengzhou. Prasar Bharati special correspondent in Beijing reports that in Zhengzhou, a city of 12 million that lies along the Yellow River, the death toll was 292, including 14 who died when a subway line was flooded. China's official news agency reported that China's State Council has announced to set up a team to investigate the disaster in Zhengzhou and will hold officials accountable if found to have derelicted their duty. A large floral tribute at the subway was sealed off last week by Zhengzhou authorities, a sign of the government's increasing sensitivity to public criticism of its handling of the disaster. Foreign journalists covering the floods were also harassed online and on the ground, part of growling crackdowns on any negative portrayal of China. Meanwhile, in a tragic development, a 20-year-old Indian student studying in a university in the Chinese city of Tianjin, 100 kilometers from capital Beijing, have been found dead in his room. Officials in Beijing on Monday said that Aman Nagsen, who hailed from Gaya in Bihar and a student of business studies in the Tianjin Foreign Studies University, was found dead on July the 29th. Prasar Bharati special correspondent in Beijing reports that the cause of his death is under investigation, according to the officials. The Indian embassy officials in Beijing are working on sending Nagsen's remains to India and are in touch with authorities in Tianjin. They are in touch with his family. The embassy had responded to a tweet by Bihar's BJP chief Sanjay Jaiswal about the death of the student on July the 30th, saying it was in communication with Chinese authorities and the deceased's family and was providing all possible assistance. Aman Nagsen was one of the few Indian students who remained in China through the coronavirus pandemic, while most of the 23,000 Indian-odd students who left for home were stuck in India, unable to return due to Beijing's reluctance to lift visa restrictions. Currently, no flights are operational between India and China. And now, a report from the business world.
The BSE Sensex climbed 364 points or 0.69% to close at 52,951. NSE Nifty also surged 122 points or 0.77% to settle at 15,885. In global equity markets, Asian shares recovered some of their recent losses. China's Shanghai Composite climbed 2%, Japan's Nikkei 225 rose 1.8%, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng gained 1.1%. South Korea's Kospi added 0.7%, while Singapore's Straits Times ended 0.2% down. European stocks were also up in intraday trade. Oil prices fell around 1.5%. In intraday trade, Brent crude was trading at around $74.40 per barrel. Back home, gold prices fell 120 rupees at multi-commodity exchange for August contracts, in sync with losses at the international markets. Gold was trading at 47,725 rupees per 10 gram. Silver prices also declined 150 rupees to trade at 67,700 rupees per kilogram per September contract when reports last came in. And the rupee appreciated 7 paisa to close at 74 rupees and 35 paisa against the US dollar. Anubha Rohatgi for World News, All India Radio.
And now moving on to sports. At the Tokyo Olympics, the Indian women's hockey team scripted history by qualifying for the Olympic Games semi-finals for the first time ever on Monday. The Indian team defeated three-time champions Australia by a solitary goal. They will meet Argentina in the semi-finals on Wednesday. This comes a day after the Indian men's hockey team entered the Olympic semi-finals after 4 decades, beating Great Britain 3-1 in the last 8. The men in blue will take on Belgium in the last 4 on Tuesday. However, India's Kamalpreet Kaur finished 6th with a 63.70 meter throw in the women's discus throw finals. United States' Valerie Allman won the gold medal with the best throw of 68.98 meters. The silver went to Christine Pudenz of Germany with 66.86 meter throw. The bronze was bagged by Cuban Yaim Revez with 65.72 meters. In equestrian, Indian participant Fawad Mirza finished 23rd, while Yulia Krajewski of Germany clinched the gold medal by topping the table. England's Storm McKeven won the silver and Andrew Hoy of Australia took the bronze. Early in the morning, Indian sprinter Duti Chand ran her season's best, but still failed to qualify to the semi-finals. Women's 200 meters, as she clocked a time of 23.85 seconds to finish last in the heat. In shooting, Aishwarya Pratap Singh Tomar and Sanjeev Rajput failed to qualify in men's 50-meter rifle 3 positions. India's athletics team will also be in action on Tuesday as Anu Rani will participate in the javelin throw while Tajinder Singh Toor will take part in the men's shot put qualification. India's campaign in wrestling will also begin on Tuesday as Sonam Malik will be up against Bolor Thuya Khuler Khu of Mongolia in the women's 62kg freestyle category. The 7-member wrestling squad also includes the likes of Bajrang Punia, Vinesh Phogat, Seema Bisla, Anshu Malik, Ravi Kumar Dahiya and Deepak Punia.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The Washington Post writes that a day after stumbling out of a medal, gymnast Jade Carey rebounded to win gold. The Wall Street Journal reports that new fuel efficiency standards are imminent as the auto industry pushes for middle ground. The Guardian writes USA stunned by Jessie Fleming penalty as Canada reach Olympic football final. Himalayan Times reports 23 more COVID-related fatalities as active caseload stands at 31,629. And South China Morning Post reports Hong Kong's anti-corruption watchdog has charged Anthony Wong, a singer and prominent pro-democracy activist. A quick look at the headlines once again. India highlights major areas of focus for the United Nations Security Council in August under its presidency. India and China agree to continue efforts in ensuring stability along the LAC in the western sector. Myanmar military senior general Min Aung Hlaing declares himself the Prime Minister, expresses readiness to work with ASEAN leaders. UK summons Iranian ambassador over MV Mercer Street attack. United States announces a Priority 2 P2 designation program for Afghan refugee admissions. Beijing on high alert as China tries to contain flare-up in COVID-19 cases. And at the Tokyo Olympics, Indian women's hockey team scripts history by reaching Olympic semi-finals for the first time. Men's hockey team to take on Belgium in semi-finals on Tuesday. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from South Africa.
Vaishnav Jan do tene kahiye je peed parai jane re par dukhe upkar kare to ye par dukhe के उपकार करे तो ये मन अभिमान नाने रे वैष्णव जन दो तेने कर.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.